Okay, hi everybody. My name is Jordan Bousfield and my project is called Future Baby. So, are you familiar with designer babies? Have you ever wondered what would change if we were able to redesign humans to suit our own needs and desires? What effect this could have on disease, human abilities, beauty standards, diversity, and even aging? If you answer no, you're not unlike myself, who had never really previously considered the potentialities of genetic engineering. Or, perhaps even harder to imagine, are the consequences of its adoption. Future Baby is an interactive narrative website that explores what could happen when one's desire to conceive the perfect child meets the scientific capabilities to do so. This project invites users to imagine the ability to make their child more extroverted, or perhaps more analytical, and places the user into an oddly imaginable future with an entirely new set of reproductive capabilities. So join me in imagining that you're ready to have a child. Written into the narrative are 5 possible ways to conceive your baby. Determinants such as whether or not you're single or able to bear a child will constrain the options that are presented to you. The greatest difference for single parents is that they go through the process of selecting a donor or a surrogate. The 5 methods include in vitro fertilization, artificial pregnancy, surrogacy, artificial insemination, and natural conception. Within those five options, there are 2 different categories. One being internal fertilization and the other external fertilization. So, within internal fertilization lies surrogacy, artificial insemination, and natural conception. If we look at external fertilization, IVF, or in vitro fertilization, is the modern day test tube baby. This is a procedure that's widely adopted to help couples who are having difficulties conceiving. Prior to implantation, IVF offers the most feasible opportunity for genetic engineering as it stands today. Already there is the ability to compare different embryos and select one for implantation. And this is the most accessible time to either block particular genes from expressing or introduce new genes. Artificial pregnancy is a fictional procedure that would host a pregnancy outside of a woman's body, whereby a fetus would grow in a laboratory. Artificial pregnancy has the potential to offer the same benefits pre-implantation as IVF while warranting a woman's body unnecessary for pregnancy. External fertilization procedures have the additional step of selecting an embryo for implantation. This forces the user to make a comparison. They will have to decide what they value more, they will analyze and assess disease and likelihood, and what qualities they deem beneficial or harmful. The further the user gets into the narrative, the more ambiguous and further from reality the story becomes. Regardless of the method of conception the user will be presented with the option to select and re-engineer their unborn baby's DNA based on these different criteria. Any option that the user is presented with has a proven genetic predisposition. The personality characteristics are based on a longitudinal study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology that proved the genetic makeup of a child's personality is stronger than child rearing. This was the first study of its kind to examine identical twins reared in different families. The intelligence section was similarly informed. I referenced different models of intelligence, such as Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences and the Cattell-Horn-Carroll theory. And secondly, I looked at studies that investigated the inherited characteristics of these intellectual traits, and together this informed the list of traits that I included in the website. All of the modifications are only customizable to certain degrees. Overall, an individual's predisposition to many of these traits is determined by a complex network of genes working together. As scientists continue to more accurately map the human genome, new connections are being revealed every day. After navigating through this new reproductive landscape, the user will be presented with their unborn child and an excerpt on what their life might be like based on the choices you have made on their behalf. Additionally, Future Baby will create a visualization of where you, the user, place the greatest emphasis and what your values might be relative to other users. So now I just want to take a step back from talking about the intricacies of reproductive technologies to discuss what I find really interesting about this topic, and that is what we as societies value in human beings. So when parents consider their unborn child's future, what is their motivation? Is it important to ensure success, happiness, maybe health? How can we measure these things? And at what point is it really just none of our business, and are we intervening too far with nature? So my whole process began by a timeline that was designed to gain people's insights into what technological advancements they foresee in the future, when they foresee them coming, and what their impact could potentially be. The discussion around reproductive technologies, genderless societies, and augmented humans created by far the greatest interest amongst the participants. Once I had defined this as the domain that I wanted to work in, I further prototyped different forms that I could use to work in, such as timelines, media artifacts, and future interviews. This interactive timeline prompted a great discussion about what types of artifacts could be collected. Ultimately, these tests revealed that a choose-your-own-adventure style narrative was the most effective and intriguing form. The third and final set of prototypes was a series of click-through interactive stories and decision trees. These tests explored different narrative and presentation styles, all investigating the complexity of reproductive rights in the future. This provided valuable insight into what style of questions caused people to think more deeply about the adoption of these procedures and their consequences. Users found decisions requiring them to select from different options most interesting. It forced them to consider where they place the greatest value versus what characteristics are less important to them. So there are two main areas of scientific achievement that have brought about the very real possibility of designer babies, and those being genetic engineering and reproductive procedures. Perhaps the greatest achievement in genetic engineering thus far is the introduction of the CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing system, which allows for unprecedented accuracy when editing the human genome. As these cutting-edge procedures, any genome. As these cutting-edge procedures are introduced to the market, societies will have to reevaluate what and how individuals adopt them into their reproductive plan. How genetic engineering is regulated and the ethical rules that guide their usage will largely determine people's reproductive rights in the future. An important note about these types of procedures is that they completely separate sex from reproduction. Procedures such as IVF, artificial pregnancies, remove intercourse as a prerequisite to pregnancy. Contraceptives have worked to achieve the reversal of this by preventing pregnancy as a result of intercourse. Today, the two actions can exist in isolation of each other. As I continue to collect these images of ideals, I want to use them to imagine what our world could look like and create a visualization of what we deem to be important and identify different cultural differences or perhaps consensus. The website will become a collection of insight about human values. I'm also curious about parental likeness and why parents work so hard to ensure that their children are alike them. So just to wrap up, in my opinion, these procedures have the potential to be the greatest scientific achievement of our lifetime. They simultaneously have the potential to be devastatingly destructive. Perhaps more interesting than the grandiosity of the science is the complete ambiguity, debate, and uncertainty among both the general public and the scientific communities. These interventions directly impact future generations whom have no agency over their future. Human genetic engineering is no longer science fiction and is quickly and unsuspectingly becoming reality. Thank you.
So, this is going to be a website. First, excellent